Over 2 decades of sports radio dominance in Utah.
My favorite.
This is DJ and PK, presented by Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort, on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Win big every Wednesday on the KSL Sports Zone with Win Ticket Wednesday. This Wednesday, win tickets to Eric Church and the Free the Machine Tour, October 23rd at the Delta Center. Find your tickets on SeatGeek and then listen to the KSL Sports Zone all day this Wednesday for your chance to win. All right, camp starting up for BYU on Wednesday. Yes. Just a few days away. Joining us now is our BYU Insider. You can read all of his stuff, and he fills the internet with content constantly at KSLSports.com. If it were in print, there would be many forests that would be crumbled to use for paper by Mitch Harper. But we have the internet, so we're not using any paper.
That's right. I'm happy to be here, PK. It's good. It's good to be back and breaking down camp, and it should be no shortage of storylines for BYU going into this season.
So obviously we've got to hit the overwhelming number one story without question. Everybody knows it. It is the dominant story and it will continue to be all camp. Who is going to be the second receiver next to Chase Roberts?
Well, I think that will probably be, we know what it is. It's QB, but that receiver spot is kind of interesting, underrated, but that QB position, though, I think is going to just be massive to see how this staff handles it because, Kalani, his messaging coming out of Big 12 Media Days, and he talked with you guys too, and, he feels like they've seen it all. Well, this is one quarterback race that they haven't experienced where they lose the starter and in May, and then you have to pivot on the fly during what was the point of the calendar where you feel like you know what your roster is going to be entering the fall. So this element of a quarterback battle they have never experienced before. But when it comes to 3-man quarterback races, when it comes to all these battles, true freshmen in the mix, they have handled that. And honestly, you look at Kalani's time at BYU, he's entering his 10th year. His best teams probably have started in years where they had a quarterback race dominate the headlines in fall camp. And I think that gives them the confidence that they can navigate this and still be a really good football team this fall. But I just think there is a drop-off from Jake Retzlaff to these other three.
Yeah, we had that last year with Bohannon, and then obviously Retzlaff, and Retzlaff leaves, and now he's Retzleave. He's gone. And this is so bizarre in the world of college football and college sports in general. You bring in a freshman, and a lot of freshmen, particularly at quarterback, it's not a news story where they graduate early and come in January and get a jump on spring ball. He had spring ball, but he had it at Stanford. And now he goes and he comes to BYU in Provo to try to win the job here after having spring ball at another school. It's crazy, but that's how we go into it. That they've changed the rules. We were talking about it earlier, how in the NFL, everything is wide open, practices and all, and you can film it, you can do whatever you want. But in college, they've just shut it down so much and let you see the last 20 minutes, if that, and some of them don't even do that. So we would all be intrigued when they have the time for, and when I was a beat writer, which is a long time ago now, you'd sit around and BS with your fellow media guys as they're doing drills, and then when they'd break out into team, everybody got serious, and you'd walk towards it, and you'd start to observe it, and when that time would come, when it comes here in a few days, it would be, okay, who's going to take the first snap? Somehow, even that means nothing, we're going to read a lot into it because that's all we have to read into it. So in your estimation, who, when they do that team, which is 11 on 11, and they, we're not tackling here, especially in the beginning because they have the acclimation where they can't wear full pads, I think, until the third or fourth day, whatever it is, with all the rules that they got going on in the NCAA. Who do you think would take the first snap?
I would give that slight nod to McKay Hillstead because coming out of spring ball, he had a little bit of an advantage. It felt like from watching those spring observation windows, those limited windows, give McKay the chance to be that first guy. But unlike other quarterback battles at BYU where, yeah, there's a battle, but we all kind of knew what direction things were trending, this one I think you can make the case for all three. In a perfect world, Bear Bachmeier just steps right in and is the guy and takes off with this thing and becomes the star. But to me, McKay Hillstead was a guy that, coming out of Utah State, he had Power 4 interests. I mean, it took a lot to get him to BYU out of the portal. It wasn't just, he's just going to come to BYU just because he has no options. No, that BYU beat out Power 4 programs to get him. There was a lot invested. Let's see what he's got. And, Trayson Bourget also probably be next in line, and then Bear Bachmeier. But this is as wide open of a quarterback battle as I think you can honestly have for BYU. But, again, I think Hillstead probably gets that first snap. But in a perfect world, Bear Bachmeier is the one that ultimately takes off and runs with this thing during the whole entire fall camp portion of practices.
That's the voice of Mitch Harper, our BYU Insider. Check all of his stuff at KSLSports.com, and you hear him on our shows regularly throughout the year. If Hillstead was 6'1", do you think there'd be a battle?
I don't think there would. I think that with his size, that's just the biggest downside to him. There's some consistency issues, and it was up and down in spring ball. And that's why Aaron Roderick did not make it clear who was the backup quarterback, because in retrospect, that would have been nice to announce a winner of that job, because then that's kind of the assumed starter at this point. But, McKay Hillstead was up and down, and you saw moments of great athletic ability. His running ability was on full display during spring. Every practice, it felt like he had a really nice run. There were some with that, it felt like the speed was just blowing by defenders and getting down the sideline for some big plays. So consistency is going to be an issue for McKay Hillstead, but his size also is an issue too. You watch some of the B-roll and the highlights from spring ball. He's buried behind the line of scrimmage. When you get advantage of at the line of scrimmage, you don't see him. Yeah. And that's going to be a challenge. I mean, BYU's got a big offensive line, and that is something that you've got to factor into the decision. Whereas Trayson Bourget, 6'1", 6'2", probably 6'1", 205. He's got kind of just your typical quarterback measurables, and he's pretty solid. And I think he had a better arm. He showed off a better arm in spring ball than I think people gave them, including myself, credit for. So he was pretty accurate with the deep passes. And, but I just think McKay Hillstead's athleticism, the ability to extend plays, because there is some questions at the tackle positions. I know Aaron Roderick is very confident in Isaiah Jada at left tackle. Right tackle, probably going to be Andrew Gentry, but Austin Leaus is competing there too. Still, they're new faces there. And with that kind of a question at the offensive tackle spot a little bit, it'd be nice to have a quarterback that can extend plays. All of these guys could do that, all three of them, but McKay Hillstead, I think, is the best athlete of the group.
Bourget, as I understand, has a really good arm and is pretty accurate, but just doesn't have the athleticism.
He can run. I mean, he had about 200-something yards at Western Michigan running the football, but he's not as athletic as Hillstead and Bachmeier, though.
See, it's an interesting dilemma for Aaron Roderick because he likes to push the ball downfield. The goal is to not just dink and dunk your way, because in today's college world, a 10, 12-play drive, unless you're Air Force, seems like it's very difficult. And so you have to, what they call the chunk plays, to get the ball downfield, 15, 20, 25. And even at Retzlaff, he's not he wasn't Josh Allen here or any of the great passers in the league, but he had the ability to make some big plays. And so occasionally that got in the way. The interception in Tempe sealed the game essentially. But he was able to make some big plays. When you look at these guys, I wonder what Aaron Roderick's going to think as far as you talk about some questions on the offensive line and Hillstead using his speed. But what does Aaron want? Is it at the expense of some big plays? You see where I'm going there?
No, I do. And I think ultimately, you're right that they ultimately want to stretch the field. That's been the calling card from A-Rod since he joined the staff in 2018. They want to have quarterbacks that can get downfield and pass the rock. And Kalani highlighted that at Big 12 Media Days, that all these guys he believes can spin it. I asked him if he felt Bear Bachmeier was more athlete than actual quarterback right now. He said no. He silenced that. He's like, this guy can sling it just as well as Hillstead and Bourget. So the one that's the most accurate, takes care of the football, but can show the most accuracy in deep passes, I think would be a huge piece to this conversation of who's going to be the starting quarterback in week one. But I really think, though, with these three quarterbacks, because the wrinkle in this, to me, with this quarterback battle is that, Kalani Sitake's got job security. He's got a long-term extension. Brian Santiago's been singing his praises everywhere, every mic he can get. And so Kalani's not back against the wall like it kind of felt like last year.
Last year, yeah.
Whereas he's got job security. He retained his staff. He's kind of got the peace of mind. Like, you don't want to lose all the momentum from last year in that 11-win campaign. You don't want to go back to a losing season. But you've also got the future star, or at least the perceived, believed to be star, in Ryder Lyons, who's going to get all the hype, all the accolades as the guy that's kind of in the pipeline. So it's like, just, if whoever gets the job coming out of fall camp, great, they start. But if they struggle, go to the next guy. Like, I think all three of these guys have to be ready to play, and they're going to maybe have their moments to play at some point this season. Ideally, you would like one guy to just take off and run with it, and he's playing all 12 games, but we've seen over the years, that doesn't happen very often. I mean, since Kalani's been the coach, it's only happened twice. That was 2020 and 2024, both great years. A lot of those other years, up and down, quarterback roulette. It was a different QB every single week, injury. So I think all three of these guys got to be ready. And if they have games where they're struggling, I don't think Aaron Roderick or Kalani should be afraid to go to that next guy, because none of these three players carry the weight of the program, because the guy that's ultimately going to do that is down the line in Ryder Lyons. And this coaching staff's got the job security that they know they're going to coach that guy.
That's an excellent point. Bachmeier comes to BYU with pretty much as much, whatever they're worth, it's up to you to decide what they're worth, credentials as any quarterback in a given good while.
Since Jacob Conover. He's the highest rated quarterback Aaron Roderick signed since he joined BYU staff. So I think in terms of resume, credentials, and the buzz that was coming out of Stanford that he was contending to be in the mix as QB1 there, I think he's really interesting. And A-Rod's been on these airwaves here on The Zone talking about Bear's going to be a special player. So they really are excited about him. I'm really curious, though, to see how quick he learns the playbook. I just think back to other quarterbacks, including McKay Hillstead. McKay Hillstead in spring, he made it a point that he needed to still learn the entire playbook when talking with him under the thought of him contending for the backup role. Now it's different with being competing for the starter position. Last year, Gary Bohannon in the summertime, he said his biggest focus was learning the playbook, and he was a guy that arrived in January. Is it realistic for Bear Bachmeier arriving in May to learn this playbook, and Aaron Roderick and the staff feeling confident enough to give him the reins to this offense? Jake Retzloff last year had the ability to check out of a lot of plays and call different looks at the line of scrimmage. They gave him some autonomy to do that last year. This coaching staff did. And they, do they have that luxury with one of these quarterbacks? I would think it probably isn't Bear Bachmeier, but he's a really smart guy. The family they get degrees in short order. So Can they learn the playbook quick too? That's going to be something that's really interesting to me in regards to Bear Bachmeier.
You referenced his brother Tiger, who got a degree in Stanford in 2.5 years in electrical engineering, was it? And so if you're doing that from Stanford, then obviously you got some brains. And if you're just getting admitted to Stanford, you got some brains. And obviously Bachmeier was, the younger one, was admitted to Stanford. And I've heard some folks say, well, they should do it the way they handled Zach Wilson. And I think they had a game plan going into this season for Zach Wilson, and they were pinpointing when he would take over, because they knew, A-Rod, Kalani, Fessy, and those guys, they all knew that Zach Wilson was the most talented quarterback they had on the roster, but he was a freshman, and he was coming in, and they didn't want to give him the keys early, and so they knew, basically, I can't remember the exact game, but it was halfway during the season.
Why?
And then he would take off. Well, in those days as an independent, the schedule was front-loaded. Well, here it's reversed. And the easier games, at least on paper right now, are in the beginning. We're talking about those 3 non-conference games, right? So they should be able to go 3-0 with whomever at quarterback. And the idea being that, then when who's their first conference game?
Colorado.
Yeah, and that's going to be, a highly entertaining game and all that stuff. And so, the revenge and blah, blah, blah. So they got that game, and you want to be ready to go in that 4th week. So where I'm going with this, you think that if Bachmeier, that we always use analogies for other sports, and so we'll go with the horse racing one here. If he's coming up on the outside, he's not quite in the lead, but he's got some closing speed here. And ultimately what you want is your quarterback to be Secretariat and then look around and can't find the guy behind you because you're 31 lengths ahead. But we're not going to have that. I wouldn't think we're going to have that. That would be amazing if we did have that. I just don't see a way that it does happen. And it's going to be a tight race. And if you think that you're going to play him at some point, even if he's not necessarily the clear-cut winner right now, do you want, and you can apply it to the other 2 guys as well, but do you want to give that guy the nod so by game 4, he's got 3 games under his belt, and it should stand to reason whoever it is should be better in game 4 than they were better in game 1?
I believe so, because if he's on even footing with Hillstead and Bourget by the end of camp, go with him. Because Portland State, Stanford, you should win those games. I mean, heck, the Stanford game could probably be advantageous to have him out there because he's a little bit familiar with that personnel on the defensive side. I would, if Bear Bachmeier shines and succeeds like, some believe he could, I think that, don't be afraid to go with him because I think in this year too, losing your starting quarterback in May, I think there's an understanding where, it's all out there. Anyone could win this job, and if a freshman emerges, why not go with him? But at the same time, if he struggles, do you just go all in and lean in, or do you pivot to Hillstead or Bourget if Bachmeier does struggle? And I think there's got to be an understanding that if he is struggling, that they have to make a change if needed. Aaron Roderick and Kalani have been typically they're going to lean in and give the team to that quarterback. There were games last year, that SMU in particular, where Jake Retzlaff, it felt like his back's against the wall. He's got to perform going into that Wyoming week because he did not play well against SMU. He was just not good at all. And then he performed well against Wyoming, and then Kansas State happened, and away he went. But Bear Bachmeier, I think if he shines in fall camp, and Aaron Roderick's got conviction behind it, go with him. I just think that he's a recruit too that BYU offered as a sophomore. He was at BYU camp. They liked him early in the recruiting process, but he just went off the board early and committed to Stanford. But once he hit the portal, they pounced and made him a priority and got him. Even with Retzlaff on board, they wanted him in their pipeline to have that quarterback that they feel could maybe be a QB1, and that day could be sooner rather than later, much sooner than they would ever envision.
How much do you think that the offense can help and change based on the Retzlaff's gone, so they were going to have a mindset, we're going to do this, this, and this, and now he's out of the picture, and so you've got these other guys here. Do you see a level of change in what the plan would be and tailor it?
I don't see much change. I think they're still going to have their kind of core identity offensively, and I think that they can cater some of the playbook obviously to the skill sets of each individual QB, but I would expect most of this playbook is going to be probably the same, and that these guys got to operate and execute. Like they'll adjust, but I think that the stretching the field, being aggressive, late 2-minute drills, like that's going to be the expectation and the standard, and then they'll just kind of adjust according to some of the skill sets. But all 3 of these guys can pass the football. They can run. Bourget, not as maybe great of a runner as the others, but I think this is a very interesting battle where there's really a case for all 3. And I think it makes it for interesting competition, one that, if we get the chance to watch all that and see what we can in fall camp, I know it's going to be must see because I think all of us will be analyzing every single snap and every single throw.
All right, that's the voice of Mitch Harper. You can read his stuff, KSLSports.com. He knows all about BYU football. Coming up, we will continue the discussion at the top of the hour. We'll change it to Utah, and Steve Bartle will join us. Want to talk about some of the offensive guys who can make life easier on whomever the quarterback is. And then after that, obviously, we'll get to the defense. So stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is DJ and PK, presented by Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK proudly presented by our title sponsor, Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort. I know they got a special going on for folks in the state of Utah. I got that email. Check it out. It's a beautiful course where they played the LPGA and they played the PGA. I've played it. It's fun. It's beautiful, obviously, with the Snow Canyon and all the Red Rock there. It's just a great place to hang out. And plus, man, they got all sorts of restaurants and stuff now. So check that out. Utah's premier golf resort is Black Desert Resort over there in the St. George area. I think it's literally in Ivins, but it's we all know where it is on the way to Snow Canyon and Tuacahn. So joining us now, we're talking BYU football as camp opens up in a few days. We've got Mitch Harper, our BYU Insider for KSLSports.com. And we know the quarterback battle is the story of the camp, and it will continue probably for the entire camp. And it may even continue into the season. We'll see how that plays out there. But, you know, he's one guy. He's the most important guy, obviously. But they got others on that offense, and you're going to need other guys to contribute. So who do you look for to take some of the pressure off of the quarterback in terms of being able to get that ball down the field and in the end zone?
It's got to be L.J. Martin, junior running back for BYU. He's led the team in rushing yards the past 2 seasons. It's time for L.J. Martin to emerge as maybe one of the best running backs potentially in the Big 12. They need that more than ever with the uncertainty at the quarterback position. And L.J. Martin had that great performance in the bowl game, pretty much like the rest of the BYU team, but he was the offensive MVP in that blowout win over Colorado. And, you know, he said he's healthy, he's good to go, which is a change of pace for him. He's always been kind of banged up. You know, last year was a shoulder, then it was the ankle at the SMU game. Yeah. He has always been injured. So if
the
he can
talent is there, but what about the health, man?
And that's the biggest thing, but he's healthy going into fall. He's going to be a huge focal point. But the nice thing is for BYU, and this is the second straight year, they haven't dipped into the portal at running back, which was kind of a little bit of a pipeline where they were producing NFL running backs year after year. They stayed in-house and are developing the current guys they have. To pair up with L.J. Martin's going to be Sione Moa, sophomore who had that huge breakout performance against Kansas State. A little bit of a wrecking ball running back.
Yeah, he
but
was shedding tacklers.
He's a good athlete, too. Played basketball in high school at Timpview. Was once a Navy signee, but then he decided to come to BYU after his mission. And he's going to be probably their number 2. And he was a former walk-on last year. Now he's on scholarship. And whatever that means that these days with the roster limits. But those are going to be the top 2 guys at running back. And then at wide receiver, obviously, you look at Chase Roberts. And Chase is going to be interesting because he missed all of spring due to the shoulder injury that he suffered in the Alamo Bowl. He says that he's good to go, ready, but I think it's kind of a case of, you know, in a perfect role, if Jake was still around, maybe just ease him into the season because you know what you've got, but you kind of need to have that chemistry with these quarterbacks. And he said at media days that he was trying to get work in with all 3, and I think that's an underrated piece to all this, is that, you know, if you're a guy like Chase Roberts who was planning on a senior year where you had continuity maybe at the quarterback position, that gets upended, and now you got to go throw with 3 different guys, and then it's a little bit of a political thing where, you know, who do you go to? There's a lot to unpack there, but Chase Roberts coming back from the shoulder injury, you know, he's expected to be ready, and he's a first-team All-Big 12 preseason pick. He's got to be big. And, you know, he's been the leader in receiving yards the past 2 seasons for BYU. If he has at least 1,000 yards this year, which would be a tall task with the quarterback uncertainty, but he could move in the all-time list statistically of some of the great receivers in BYU history. So he's got the chance to climb the leaderboards and have a really big year. So those are going to be the biggest names that help this quarterback heading into 2025.
And then behind those guys, I mean, those are the biggest names. You talk about Moa. So it looks like they got a nice 1-2 combo. And what's Ropati's status?
Yeah, Ropati has been saying that he's coming back. We were expecting to see him in spring ball, but then he wasn't on the roster. He was expected to have a medical redshirt year, not a JUCO, Diego Pavia sort of situation. It's more medical based, kind of like Maury Bamba. We'll get to them on the defensive side. He's been saying that he's going to be part of the team on his podcast that he hosts, but until we see it, again, because of asking Kalani about it at media days, he said that they're still sorting through the grandfathering of the roster with players that maybe were moved on, coming back. Does Ropati fit under that bucket? We'll see. But, so if they do have him, that's great, because then you've got Martin, Moa, Ropati, three guys that have given you nice snaps in games.
They can give you a spark. We saw it in the Utah game.
And Nawahine, too, played a little bit against SMU and Wyoming due to all the injuries last year. And then the guy they really like at running back that's a promising young talent, redshirted last year. He's drawn comparisons to Reno Mahe of back in the day when he was coming out of Brighton High School. Pokayawa Honga, former Timpview product, really shifty, nice pass catcher out of the backfield. I would not be surprised if there's a role that emerges for him, even if Ropati is in the fold. Honga's going to find a way to get on the field because of his pass-catching ability out of the backfield, and he's got a lot of speed, too. So that's the core group, and then they've also got a young kid in Ridgeline High product, Jovesa Demuni, who redshirted last year after coming back from mission. He showed some nice signs with the third-team offense in spring ball, but those are probably your top 4 or 5 if Ropati's in the mix.
I'm concerned about the level of speed to be able to get downfield on the outside.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair criticism. And that's where LJ Martin's got to be special. Working on his speed has been an area of focus for him. And, they've got some physical backs that can get up the middle. But do they have that game-changing, big play, chunk yardage, as we were talking about through the air? Do they have that guy? I think they do, potentially with LJ. But they got to see it consistently. And I think that's kind of the theme with a lot of these position groups at BYU is that you like the personnel. The depth overall feels better than where it's been in years past compared to BYU teams of old. But it's still, are they going to be – who's going to be like an all Big 12 guy? And that's the nice thing about being in a conference, again, is that you've got a barometer for comparing yourself. And let's see if someone can be to that level of talent for BYU in that running back position.
And then – there's a bunch of names ready to step up. I don't know who it's going to be as far as the complement, I guess you could say, to Roberts. I can name names, but I'm not sure what level of production these guys are going to give me. There's a bunch of names.
Yeah.
And you talk about that depth, and I think that's what you're referencing, is that I can name you 4 or 5 guys. You could probably name me 7, 8 guys. But what do you see as far as that goes? Because, they had a nice 1-2 combo last year with
Lassiter and Roberts.
Right, and he made enough big plays.
And they thought he was going to be able to come back, and he wanted to come back, and then the JUCO ruling amounted to nothing, where he couldn't come back.
And so where are we going to have who do you like?
You got to look at Stanford transfer Tiger Bachmeier. He's got to come in and be a difference maker right away for BYU. And, he's a junior, 3rd year in college football. I think he's going to be looked upon to be an instant impact contributor for BYU. And then I think the guy that no one's talking about because he was injured in spring ball and he was banged up a little bit at season's end, that I would not be surprised ends up being the number 2 receiver, is Cody Hagan. Sophomore receiver from Corner Canyon. He's going to be special. The speed on Hagan, he's got all the talent in the world to be the next big thing at receiver for BYU, and I think you start to see that materialize this year. It's just unfortunate that he missed spring due to injury, and he's expected to be ready to go for fall camp. That, to me, is the guy that's going to be the complement to Roberts.
It's his time now, isn't it?
I think so. And
he's now removed from the mission.
Yes, and last year he appeared in about 8 games. Most of it was special teams, but he got a few catches. I think the UCF game, there were some opportunities where he played in games and got actual game snaps. And it's time for him. He was a former 4-star prospect, turned down the likes of Michigan, Utah, Stanford, the usual suspects that have always historically been a thorn in BYU's side. BYU got him when before BYU was becoming perceived Bags U with NIL, they got Cody Hagan. So that's a big get, and I think it's his time. But a real sleeper, too. Tiger Bachmeier is the newcomer that I think a lot of people are going to be zeroed in on. Reggie Frischknecht, a transfer from Weber State, tall kid, 6'4", kind of in the mold of years ago. This is a receiver early in the Kalani era. Nick Kurtz, he was a tall guy.
Yeah.
Reggie Frischknecht will be one to watch. He was a JUCO transfer. Then he went to Weber State for a semester. Then he joined BYU in the spring transfer portal window. It wouldn't shock me if at a minimum he's in the 2 deep. He could contend maybe for a starting role. You've got JoJo Phillips, too, who had a really nice spring, primarily in the first-team offense with Chase Roberts out. But, losing Keelan Marion was a big blow to this group. I thought Keelan Marion was a superstar in spring. He looked fantastic, and that loss was significant. Now, maybe you could say that he was complaining a bit about his NIL and what he needed and what he wanted. Well, okay, but he was productive. He was really good at season's end and during spring ball. So these guys got to really step up in a much bigger way and take a huge step forward to pair up with Roberts to round out this group.
You think any of those guys are saying to these quarterbacks, "I'm your guy, man"? Me.
They should. They need to, because I think that's important to do that. And that's just, to me, kind of the underrated piece, as I was saying, is, if you are a receiver like Chase Roberts, you don't want to prefer one over the other, so you're probably trying to get equal time, and is your time getting spread thin to really hone in and really master kind of that chemistry. So it'll be interesting, and that's where sorting this out earlier in camp, to at least weed out one guy would be probably advantageous for BYU as they try to figure out who's going to be that QB1.
Before we get to the defense, I want to hit on special teams, and it seems like they are in a great spot. From what I can gather and what we've seen, that special teams, I'm not sure last year that I've ever seen, collectively speaking, a better special teams units than what we had last year, and I'm expecting a lot of the same.
Well, I agree, and think back to kind of the heyday with Utah, where that third phase of the game with the Hackett, Wisnowski, that's what BYU had last year.
Yeah.
It really did. They just didn't have like a Ray Guy winner, but they had an elite special teams unit where, in a league like the Big 12, where every game is basically a 3-point spread, that's massive to win the third phase of the game. So it felt like every week BYU was producing touchdowns from special teams. So you bring back Will Farron, who I think, honestly, is the best kicker in college football. He was 24 of 27 last year, perfect on extra points. He consistently was booting 50-plus yarders with ease. Consistently. BYU hasn't had a kicker like that it feels like years. I know Jake Oldroyd played a long time, but he was up and down. It was a roller coaster. Farron has been good from the get-go, and I would expect he's going to be even better as a senior, probably a Lou Groza type candidate this year. And then Sam Vanderhaar returns as the punter. I think the big question is going to be in the kick return game, how do you replace Keelan Marion? That's where I think Tiger Bachmeier steps in and makes an impact, along with Parker Kingston, who's going to anchor that punt return spot. They also bring Jeff Grimes' kid in from the transfer portal from Baylor, Garrison Grimes. He's going to be the long snapper. So that's a group that's really confident, and a lot of that's too with Kelly Papinga. Talking with him, that he's very confident. His system with special teams has worked from his days with Bronco, at Virginia, at Boise State, and now at BYU. And he's confident no matter who the faces are that take these spots, it's going to operate at a high level. So we'll see if they can follow up what was last year one of the best special team units in college football season ago.
Yeah, and then their ability to drum up a trick play.
Absolutely.
Here and there.
That's going to be huge. And that was part of the this team's success with – they always just – BYU last year, when I think people looked at this program and team as kind of a fluke, they were great at just – at a timely moment to do something that really changed the momentum, the whole look and feel of a game. And a lot of that was from the special teams. And like the Utah game, the UCF game, that's going to be the challenge in front of them to do that this year.
Yeah. All right. One more segment to go with Mitch Harper, our KSL insider for BYU Sports, and we will hit on their defense And I'm excited about their defense because I think that they could be really good defensively this season, and we'll get to that next. And then at the top of the hour, we'll change over and talk Utah with Steve Bartle. Stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is Utah's best coverage of the Utes, Cougars, Jazz, and Mammoth. Here we go. From the guys who have been there for all the biggest moments in Utah sports history. You're listening to DJ and PK. Presented by Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Okay, man. Football camp is opening right around the corner. And we're talking BYU. And top of the hour, we're going to talk Utah. Mitch Harper, our BYU Insider for KSL Sports, is going to join us here in these closing minutes. We're going to talk about BYU's defense. I'm jacked about the defense. I think it has the opportunity and the possibility, and it's just on paper right now, to be one of the better, if not the best one they've had in years.
I agree. Last year, they only allowed 19 points per game, number one defense in the Big 12. Only 2 years removed from really hitting rock bottom as a defense, and Jay Hill has quickly turned it around, and I think there's more excitement because now Jay Hill's getting his guys in. Not to say that like he inherited guys and turned them into the number one defense. Now he's getting personnel that he believes fits his scheme, and I think it's only going to go higher to a higher level. Now, I think it all starts, too, with the defensive tackle and Keanu Tanavasa. He's got to be the leader, everything for BYU.
You mean that traitor?
That traitor, the guy that just continues to fan the rivalry flames. Keanu Tanavasa, the man who was tweeting that he was a Utah man, and then he's taking the bag at BYU.
And he's so soft-spoken, too.
He is. I mean, it's interesting.
It's a good interview, but he's soft-spoken.
He is. But he's got to be the guy that starts it all.
If he's healthy, I think he will be.
Yeah, and he has to be. And look, Jay Hill's put that pressure on him, and I like that.
Oh, he's talking about being the best nose tackle in college football.
I love that because that's a completely different look than what Kalani does. You know Kalani. I mean, he's not going to put anyone on the spot. He'll just kind of handle it internally where Jay's like, yeah, I expect him to be the best D-tackle in college football. Okay, I like it.
Move over, Leroy Selman at Oklahoma.
And Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah, Ndamukong Suh, yeah.
See you later, bud. It's Keanu Tanavasa time. Right. So, yeah, he's got to be everything. The thing is, too, is that what's interesting about him is that he's probably the best D-tackle, no question the best D-tackle they've had since Kairos Tonga. They've been, with their interior players the last few years, they've converted former D-ends that were, arrived at BYU at 230, and they tried to add the weight and turn them into D-tackles. Keanu Tanavasa was born to be a DT, and he's paired up with Justin Kirkland. Comes in from Oklahoma State, spring transfer portal edition. I expect he's probably going to be that starter right next to Keanu. That's the best D-tackle tandem Kalani's had since he became the head coach in 2016.
Yes, and I do think that Batty is a loss.
Yes.
I think Batty's a spiritual loss, too. You need leadership, and you need senior leadership, guys who have been through it and been through hard times. If you've been through hard times to come out the other side, I think you have a lot of credibility there, and certainly Batty had it. What do you think as far as filling his shoes, knowing that they're awfully big?
Well, I know Logan Latu, he's probably going to be that guy that starts to begin with, and he got a medical redshirt year, wasn't expected to be back. He's probably going to be, one of those senior leaders, but to me, you look at the defensive end position, they got the traditional D end, and then they got what they call an OE outside edge, more of a pass rusher. That to me is going to be Tausili Akana, former Texas transfer, Skyridge High product, didn't play at all at Texas. And, Cougar fans were like, why is he now being viewed as a 3-star transfer? He was a 4-star out of high school. Well, he didn't play for 2 years. So BYU is banking on just the raw athleticism and the ability, and they're going to mold him into something special. He's already added a lot of weight. They want to get him up to 240. He's about 230 something. We'll see where he's officially at come fall camp next week. But he's packed on a lot more weight than his days on the 40 acres. Tausili Akana is going to have to be that guy that becomes that elite pass rusher that has really never been there for Kalani's teams. Batty was really good, and over the course of his career, he's one of the best in the 21st century in sack totals. But that was over a 5-year period. Kalani still hasn't had one guy that produced at least 10 sacks.
Right.
They haven't had that since Bronson Kafusi, BYU football. That was when Bronco was the coach. Akana, I'm not going to place that on him now, But I think at some point, him as a redshirt sophomore, they believe he could be that, and he's going to be a really interesting player to watch. Bodie Schoonover is someone to keep an eye on too. Former American Fork product who, turned down the likes of Nebraska to pick BYU. He's in his 4th year now, and it's time to really kind of show up. He's a redshirt junior, and I think this is going to be a year where he potentially could be that starter for BYU. But all these names I'm mentioning, they haven't proven it consistently, and that's the concern. Whereas the D tackles, they've done it at a high level at the Power 4 ranks. None of these DNs, it's all potential-based and hoping that they take a big leap forward.
We talked about how game-changing moves are found in special teams, and obviously they're also found in turnovers and takeaways. What do you think of the ability of the defense to do that this season? Yeah,
I think the cornerbacks are a huge loss. Jacob Robinson, maybe the best corner that Kalani had, during his time since he's been the head coach. So that's a huge loss. Losing Mark Collins, too. Pair of good cornerbacks that were excellent for BYU. But Maury Bamba, he's going to be expected to be that guy that kind of takes the throne, as General Guilford told me. And then, Evan Johnson, a former 10-4 guy out of Pebble Beach. And then Therian Trey Alexander. Those are the two guys contending to maybe be the other cornerback. But the nickel back that's going to step in for Jacob Robinson's role, Eddie Hecker, too, from a couple years ago, is Jonathan Cabella. He'll be really fun to watch. I think he's going to be a really good player for BYU. But, that's an underrated aspect to last year's team, is that maybe they still didn't have the sack numbers that they ultimately wanted, but they were getting picks every single week. Every game last year, they got at least one interception. Can they do that again? That would be huge, circling it back to the quarterback conversation, to give that new QB some short fields to start drives. Because you can't expect him to go 70, 80 yards every drive. Get some takeaways, maybe get some pick sixes to really help the efforts of that QB.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that they can be on the very much, not just barely, but I think if they can be significantly on the plus side in the turnover margin, that will determine a large portion of the success of the team.
Well, and the safety position is going to be really good, too. I forgot to bring them up. Tanner Wall comes back, Raider Demooney. You also bring back Tommy Parasis and Falatau Satawala. That's your top 4. And I'm really curious to kind of see how they handle that, where you've got Tanner Wall, a veteran senior, but maybe doesn't have as high of a ceiling as a Falatau Satawala or a Tommy Parasis, but he's really productive and he's a leader. How do you juggle that where Satawala and Parasis, they could, they're the type of guys that could hit the portal and have a huge list of suitors.
Right.
How do you juggle that where and manage ceilings and potential? They kind of did that with the linebackers, where Harrison Taggart, you were really good, but Sialia Sarah's got the higher ceiling. They were 1-1-8 coming out of spring. Taggart leaves as Sarah now takes over that middle linebacker spot. That's kind of an interesting, underrated viewpoint of how rosters are kind of built going forward in this rev share era.
And what they think about these guys, yeah. And Sarah, I'm really intrigued if he can stay healthy. That's a great linebacker unit that they have there, probably as good as anybody's in the conference. So I'm excited to see how that develops. Okay, well, Mitch Harper, we appreciate you for this last hour, and say goodbye to your family. You'll see them in January.
That's right. Maybe even April. Maybe April.
Oh, yeah, with basketball.
Yeah, maybe April.
Oh, yeah. We got to have you at basketball. That's the hopes and dreams and aspirations of this basketball team. I literally have seen nothing like it.
100 days till tip tomorrow, and I caught up with Richie Saunders, and they're dreaming big, like the likes of which never seen before for BYU hoops.
I know. That is just amazing. So we'll get to that as the season progresses. Thanks for coming in. We appreciate your time.
You bet, PK.
All right, that's Mitch Harper. You can read all of his stuff at KSLSports.com. He's our BYU Insider. Coming up next, we're going to flip it over to his cohort on the Ute side, Steve Bartle. I've seen him over there. I think he's playing with the rugby ball. I don't know what he's doing. We got to get him with a football here. It's football season, not rugby. We'll get to that next. Utah for the next hour till 10 o'clock. Stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.